Okay, welcome back from YouTube. Yeah, I welcome you back once again to the lesson Business Studies. That's lesson 17, and communication is the topic we're still talking about. And today I just wanted to look at the two things or two areas, factors that consider when choosing a means of what? Communication. And also we're going to look at the barriers to effective communication, what makes communication not proper. So without wasting my time, I am Mr. Mboya, without wasting my time, let's look at the lesson objective. At the end of the lesson, the learner should be able to first explain the factors they consider in choosing the appropriate means of communication. Then thereafter, we are going to also to explain barriers to effective communication one by one. So feel welcome. So let's proceed to the scope or into the content without wasting my time. In the first area, we're going to look at factors to consider when choosing a means of communication. What will make you to choose a certain means of communication? One factor is speed. One factor is based on the speed. So it is important to take time or to take in consideration the speed of the means of communication, especially when the message is urgent. So when you realize that the message is very urgent and maybe the person is not next to you, you'll find that you will consider other means of communication such as telephone. So for example, urgent message therefore telex, fax and telephones will be preferred as a means of communication. So that is one factor to consider, that's one factor to consider concerning the means or appropriate communication that is supposed to be used by a person who is trying to send a certain communication or a certain message to another person. That is how to explain the speed. So the urgent or urgently needed speed or urgently needed message require certain means such as telex, telephone and fax. Then the next is cost. The next factor is cost. So it refers to the expense incurred when sending message. So cost is all about what you go through in terms of monetary fund. So when you talk about monetary, we are talking about money here. So a less cost communication should be selected. So you will always go for something which is affordable, something which not bring maybe bring inefficiency or inconveniences in terms of your financial management. Then the next factor to consider is confidential or confidentiality. If the message you want to pass needs some confidentiality, then you are going to look into the means of communication which is much confidential than others. So for example, the message is said to be confidential when it is intended for what? Specific persons only. That is what. So in other words, you say it is private. So only that person that you intend for the message to reach to that other person you expect to get or to enable to have the message that you want to pass. Then in case a telephone, in this case, a telephone, registered mail or internal memo enclosed is what? Enclosed internal memo enclosed in an envelope may be used. So where you need message to go to somebody who is confidential, you will use the telephone, you will use the registered mail of that kind of person, and you will also put a memo into an enclosed envelope to that person. That person, the person will be able to open that envelope of that memo. That's the third factor. The next factor is distance. Distance also is another factor to consider when you want to send or when you want to send a certain message to a certain place. And how is it being considered here? So this refers to the geographical distance between the words, the sender and the receiver of the message. So that's difference between the two geographical locations. That's the distance we are talking about here. So for short distance, face-to-face, poster, and siren may be used. Where, for example, in Mboya as institutions or academic or education institution, in this place it's good to use face-to-face because people are closer, or use poster because people are closer, or use siren to pass information. But when now we're talking about somebody who's very far away, for example, some students, I heard that some students are abroad. So how can we read them? We read them different words, means by using maybe telephone, using fax, or even letters to read them. So the students who has traveled maybe outside, those people who are outside the country, The only means that we use to read them are through telephone and what? Fax and also letters. So that's another factor to consider. The long distance, you will use this one. The short distance, you will use face-to-face and others. The fifth factor to consider is the availability of evidence. If the communication or the message you want to pass needs some of the evidence that maybe later you might require in a later date, then you will only go for the one that acquires or provides avenue for the evidence to be provided. So refers to the evidence refers to what? The ability of the message or the ability of the means of communication to provide a record for future. That is what evidence is. And the future, we talk about future reference. You can refer into it. So where evidence is required, all means of written communication will be required. So if you want maybe to use the evidence that you have, then you use what you have by then into a later date, then you go for the writing, what is written down. And basically, even if you look at the receipt is an example of a written communication. When you go and buy something, when somebody wants to deny that you did not pay, you will present a receipt. And that presenting receipts act as an evidence. And maybe if somebody threatened you with a letter that he will kill you, and maybe something happened, then that letter will be presented in the court of law to act as an evidence. And then also, for those people who are taking in the financial accounts in the business or in the institutions, when the business do well, or the business does well, then you will be able to store those financial statements down. Then maybe later you will refer from them so that you can check on the way forward that you can improve the information, you can improve the institutions to do well as compared to the last which is in the record. So those are the factors to consider while choosing the appropriate means of communication. Then the next is reliability. Of course, you must use something which is reliable. You should not use something which you are not sure of. So the reliability is the assurance that the message will reach the intended what? The recipients at the intended time, place, and in the right form. Right place, right form, and intended person at the right time also. So that is what reliability is. So where reliability is to be considered, face-to-face communication should be, because there now you are talking to somebody one-on-one. So that is very reliable, because even reply will be one-on-one. Even the time you are spending there, you will be sure with the time you are spending. So that's all about reliability. And the next, accuracy. Accuracy is also another factor to consider when you're dealing with that. So accuracy refers to the exactness of the message to be conveyed by a means of communication. The exactness, the factual things on items that are supposed to be raised. So when accuracy is to be considered, then there are other means of communication that are supposed to be used, and that is necessarily written communication, and is the one that should be referred, because something written down is very accurate. You cannot change it, either by pronunciation or either by confusing. If it is written, it's an evidence there. It cannot change. Then the next factor to consider, is desired impression. When you want to pass an information that comes up with a certain desired impression, then there are certain means that you're supposed to go for. So at times, it may be necessary to create certain impression on what? On the receiver. For example, the use of telegram conveys what? A sense of urgency. That is telegram. And also the use of colored and attractive letterheads portray a good what? Image in the business. It is, for example, that's why you will find that the business are having logos. That's why if you go to any institution, you find that they're having a logo. A logo to portray an image, a logo to attract, at least to portray something very attractive to the eye of the, very appealing to the eye of the intended recipients. So the next, a means of communication that conveys the desired impression should be, therefore, be chosen. And that is audio-visual. Like TV, if you want to come up with an advertisement that is on TV, it's always good to use an attractive appearance that will attract the members of the recipients. And that is something always being considered there. Then the next thing, or the next factor to consider, when choosing appropriate means of communication among our institution and organization, we have the availability of some means. Availability. Use the means that is available always. Not that means that it's very hard to get or to find. So some means of communications are easily available than others. So a readily available means of communication should be what? Therefore be chosen. You should use something which is available everywhere to make the communication, to make everything easy for you. Make everything easy for you and even easy for the receiver. So those are the factors to consider when you want to choose appropriate means of communication. So when you ask to give or to state, you just state it the way they appear in a yellow. Speed, talk about the speed, talk about the cost, talk about the confidentiality, talk about the distance, talk about availability of evidence, then reliability and accuracy. But if you're going to explain, then it will require at least to get into the details, and please try to expand on what you're trying to say. For example, you say cost, then you'll be able to say that the more expensive what? A more expensive means will not be always desired. They will always go for the one which is affordable. Otherwise, let's go to the next point, that is talking about the barriers of effective communication. But then, before we start that, let's make this be the end of the first part of this video lesson. Let's tune in to the next one. Okay?